Do you ever get to September and just wish that you could have a crop that would show up and be a rock star at the end of the season and it just would really give you some wind in your sails? It's September and I sometimes feel like I'm running out of crops or running out of steam, or maybe I had a failed annual crop that I was trying to grow because of pest or disease or drought. And then your woody snowberry shrubs just show up and they're just gorgeous and steal the show, and they're just relatively easy. If you've ever felt that way, I just encourage you to stick around for today's video because we're going to be talking all about snowberries, which have been such a great woody addition to my farm, which I've been talking all about woodies for the last couple of videos. So this is kind of along that theme. So if you want to learn about growing another woody called snowberries or Symphocorpus on your cut flower farm, stick around. Like I said, I love a good plant that matures in the fall. You can lose your summer successions to weeds or bug pressure or all these different things. But if you've got this really great rockstar woody shrub that comes in the fall, it just like gives you a breath of fresh air, I feel like. I'm Ruth Ann. I'm in my 6th year of flower farming, planning heavily for my 7th year, planting for it in Door, Michigan. In Zone 6A, I sell almost exclusively to florists, direct to florists, or I also sell into collective. I have a flower farm. I have 5 small children whom I homeschool. Life is really full. And I sell almost exclusively to florists, which if you want to know more about that, I have a free guide, Tips for Selling Flowers to Florists. So I highly recommend that you check that out if you're interested and just want to learn a little bit of how I do that. There's a link in the description below. One of the plants on my farm that has really become, like I said, just like a breath of fresh air is these snowberries. What makes them so great? Florists really like these berries, like they add a lot of textural interest, but not only that, they also have really great foliage if you are growing the correct varieties. People say they have like a eucalyptus looking foliage, which for those of us in the north who can't really easily grow eucalyptus on a perennial basis anyway, without structures, people really like it also for that. It comes in lots of varieties. It has like early, mid, and late blooming, and I'll talk exactly what that means. And then it comes in different colors. So there's this pale pink, I have a darker pink, white, and then there's like some blush varieties. I have a darker pink. It's not super dark, but it's darker than this. It matures earlier. It's actually all done and like completely sold out of. And then right as that was finishing, this entire row has come into maturity and now I'm able to sell this. So it's really great. It spreads out your ability to sell it and your availability and the longevity of the crop. So you can have an earlier blooming ones and later blooming ones. I have the same with white. I have 2 different varieties of white. They're very similar, so I can still sell white snowberries. They just stagger a little bit. They do overlap a little bit. So we'll get more into varieties, but that is really helpful. So they just add a lot of texture for your florist and people really seem to like them. So basic growing information, you grow them in full sun. They are woody shrubs, so they come back every year and they just get better and better. I space mine every 18 to 24 inches. Yes, that's super tight. And yes, that's what these shrubs are spaced at. And they're okay. I have gotten them from bare roots from Farmer Bailey. I've also gotten them from 4-inch pots from Spring Meadow. That's what this exact variety is from Spring Meadow. This is called Coral Berries. This one, I planted this in August from 4-inch pots from Spring Meadow in 2022, which if you want to know what else I planted then, I have a video all about the 6 woody shrubs I planted in 2022, so you can check that out. So I planted them in August of 2022. And then the next spring, you know, they started growing. Okay, well, what I didn't realize was that they were actually going to give me a crop that very first year. So 2023, obviously not in 2022. I planted them at the end of the season. And they had overwintered. They all survived. And they gave me this beautiful crop in 2023 that I was able to sell and like pay for my investment, which is so wonderful to have just like a quick return crop. Like it really is nice. So they're very fast growing. Obviously it wasn't as thick and dense as it is now, but it definitely gave me sellable stems. Now I will say I've planted bare roots from Farmer Bailey. He ships them in the spring, and I planted bare roots in March of 3 other varieties actually of snowberries. And you can't really harvest and sell those that first year. So for example, I planted some this spring. They are getting some really small shoots and they will show you what the berries will look like, but they're really not sellable. So if you plant them in the spring, don't expect to have a crop that exact year, but you will the following year. Just a really fast turnaround, which makes them really great. In the late winter or early spring, so for me, that's like late February, early March, I cut them very hard. You want them pruned back to about 12 inches or potentially even less. Yes, prune them all, like cut them all off to 12 inches. And then they'll send you up these really tall, straight stems of new growth. Actually, that's actually how you want to care for your snowberries, even if you're not a flower farmer. You want to really cut them back hard every year. But as a flower farmer, especially to get your big straight stems, that's what you want for sure. So that's what I do. And if you want to see exactly how I do that, I also have a pruning video that I did in late winter of exactly doing the shrubs also. There is one thing that I have personally found that you really have to watch out for, and that is in the spring last year and somewhat this year, my crop became covered in some kind of a caterpillar and it started decimating my crops. I mean, like just eating at all the leaves, and this was in the early summer, and so it was eating all of the buds that were going to produce the berries. What I ended up having to do was spray them with BT weekly in order to kill the caterpillars. If you don't do that, I don't know what you would do to save your crop. I just kind of watch out for them, and as soon as I see them, I start spraying. I didn't have any issues with it the first year, and I did last year, so now I just like be really watchful, and when I start to see one or two, I just start spraying them weekly, and that has worked really well. I definitely lost a good portion of this particular crop of this particular snowberry. My other ones in the back were still okay when I found the caterpillars, but I definitely lost a lot of this crop last year, which was sad. I had some, but I lost some also. So watch out for those caterpillars so they don't eat your whole crop. I talked about where I source them. So I source them from Spring Meadow here, which is in Grand Haven, Michigan. It ships nationwide and into Canada. And I also have sourced them from Farmer Bailey, and he just released his fall woody shrub lineup. You can check that out. I don't know how much of it is left, but maybe you'll still find something. Now I'm going to talk about harvesting. So harvesting is pretty straightforward. So when do you harvest? You harvest them when the berries are a desired color. So you just kind of watch, because they'll be green at first, like this, and like really small. And then they'll start to bulk up and look like this. You'll still have some immature berries on the stem when you harvest them, but you just want to look and be like, oh yeah, this is a perfect stem. The berries are really full. So for example, I would say like, oh, this one is really beautiful. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to cut deep into the plant, and I really don't hardly strip these. I just like maybe pull off the bottom leaves. I really don't strip them. But do you see how the berries are really plump? I mean, there's still some immature berries on there, but that's on the whole, this looks really mature. If you wait for every single berry, you know, the last berries to mature, the first berries are going to be turning brown. This is like perfect stem. This is exactly how I would harvest it. And then I just sell them in 10 stem bunches. Here's the thing. These are extremely heavy. So don't try and hold them like this. You got to hold these upside down and harvest. They're so heavy. Like I can only hold one bunch at a time and I have to put them down. They're just extremely heavy because look at how branchy and full this is. Now, not every variety is this branchy and full. Some varieties are just not, they're just more tight, but this variety is really full and branching. But yeah, you can see like this isn't mature down here. It's pretty easy. You just kind of look and be like, oh yeah, these are pink and plump, or white and plump, not green. The immature, they'll be green. So that's how you know how to harvest them. Like I said, I cut deep into the plant. Like I cut them, I sell them tall, like 30 inches-ish, right around there. Post-harvest care, I put them in hydrating solution like I do with almost all of my woodies. The Chrysal #2 hydrating solution. Just know that some of the berries will fall off. It's just kind of, some of them will drop, even if you're harvesting them at the right stage. So just be aware that if you like take them upside down and give them a little twist, some berries will fall off. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with them. And then you want to harvest them until like the berries start to turn kind of mushy or brown. These hold pretty long for me on the plant, a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks or a little more. They're pretty good. They last pretty long. And then they really do have a pretty good base life, about 10 days. So just harvest them and put them in your cooler. They're just a really great crop. I have this variety called Proudberry Coral Berries. That's what this variety is called. It's Proudberry Coral Berries. I got this from Spring Meadow. It is the only variety of snowberries that they have, but it's a really great one. It's really great. It's super branchy, very productive, very fast growing, like I said. So it is a later maturing. So this for me matures into September. I actually started harvesting off of it last week for the very first time. Maybe I got like one bunch the week before, but pretty much was harvesting on it last week, September 10 or 12, something like that. For me, that's when this matured this year. I have 3 other varieties. So I have 2 white varieties and then a different pink one. Those are both all from Farmer Bailey. The white one is called Avalanche, also really beautiful, really branching, really full of fruit, very productive. That one matures earlier, like late August into September. I was still harvesting off of it last week, but it's pretty much all sold out now. I have Magical Ruby Falls, which is a darker pink and like a tighter habit. It's just not quite as branchy as this. It's still just as beautiful. That one also matures about the same time, maybe slightly after the white, but end of August into the early September. And then you can just look at the, at where you're buying them from when they'll mature. But it is nice to have staggered, like I said, so you can just extend the harvest window and the selling windows. Again, watch out for those caterpillars, spray with BT so you don't lose your crop. And I just think it's such a great crop because it's so fast growing. It's really helpful to have something that will pay you back pretty quickly. I checked my numbers apparently. Look at this. I have already sold over 400 stems of snowberries from 30 plants that I planted last spring. So that doesn't actually count any of this variety that I haven't even started harvesting yet. So I've already sold over 400 stems from 30 plants that I planted in the spring of 2024. I think that's pretty good. So I haven't even touched this main crop, which is more mature and bigger, having more stems, that I planted in 2022. I just think that's really helpful. I know sometimes in September I'm like, oh, like it's just long and hard at the end of the season, and it just is just like, look at these beautiful snowberries. They're just a breath of fresh air. I keep saying that, but it really is true. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out some of the other videos I've done, but I really think that you'd like the one that I just recently did about smokebush and ninebark. So if you're looking into woody shrubs for your farm, you can look at that one next. I said this in the last video, that I hope you can feel my excitement that I have about woody shrubs. I really love them. And I have gotten emails from so many of you in comments about how you share that excitement. I'm just glad that we can all unite over growing woody shrubs for our cut flower farm. I really do think that it sets you apart as a flower farmer and gives you longevity, gives you profitability, diversifies your farm and your crop, and it just can be such a helpful thing to add to your cut flower farm. So if you have other questions about that, I know I've done several one-on-one consults with other farmers about adding woody shrubs, especially if you're growing in the north particularly, like that's where I am, so that's where I am familiar with growing. So if you're interested in that, just know that that's also available. And as always, just thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, and then here's the real story. I was just thinking about this as I was walking that bunch back to my cooler. When I was pregnant with my fifth baby in 2023, I just remember these snowberries because I was so tired and exhausted at the end of the season. He was born in November, but at the end of September, I was like 36 weeks pregnant and I was so exhausted. I just remember being like, oh, well, at least I have snowberries. And then I have some pictures, which I'll put in here, that I took. And I was like, these snowberries weigh as much as this baby. Like, they're so heavy. I was just so thankful for the snowberries, particularly at that time when I was never more exhausted, I think, in my entire life as that summer. And I was just so surprised that they actually bloomed and I could sell them. And it just was such a win. That's like, when I see these particular snowberries, I just always feel like I remember picking them super pregnant, incredibly exhausted with my fifth baby. So I know there's a lot of you mamas out there flower farming and harvesting and trying to balance it all and figure it out. So I hope this just gives you some encouragement and real life. It's a balance, and it can be really challenging and hard and trying to find the balance. I mean, even now I'm like trying to record videos and before my kids eat breakfast, and I've got breakfast in the oven, and I mean, that's just kind of how it works. So anyway, just a little peek into behind the scenes.